I burn everyone else, whispered the dragon child. The human hugged her anyway. The sky above the ruined city glowed a dull orange, the remnants of fires that had burned for days. Towering buildings, once proud and gleaming, now leaned like broken teeth, their windows shattered and walls scorched. Smoke rose in slow spirals, carrying the acrid smell of burnt metal and wood. It was a world scarred by war, and Kale felt the weight of silence pressing on him. He had come here as part of a peacekeeping mission, though there was little left to protect. Most of the inhabitants had fled or perished in the recent attacks. Yet, reports of a strange, dragon-like child had reached his team, and curiosity, combined with the human instinct to help, drove him forward. The creature was said to possess the power to burn anything with a mere flicker of its flame, a being feared by even the strongest soldiers. Kale, however, believed in looking beyond fear. He had seen enough to know that power alone did not make someone evil. A sudden movement caught his eye. At the edge of a crumbled plaza, crouched among the wreckage, was the child. She was small, barely reaching Kale's waist, with scales that shimmered faintly red, like molten glass cooled into sharp edges. Her eyes glowed softly, ember-like, and a thin wisp of smoke rose from her shoulder. She was clearly frightened, yet her posture was defensive, ready to strike at anyone who dared come near. I burn everyone else, she whispered, her voice quiet but carrying a weight that made the hair on Kale's arms rise. She spoke the words as if they were both a warning and a truth she could not escape. Kale took a careful step forward, hands raised slightly to show he meant no harm. I'm not here to hurt you, he said gently. I just want to talk, I want to understand. The child flinched, her tail flicking in agitation. Small sparks leapt from her scales as she hissed softly. Don't come closer, Kale paused, letting the words sink in. I won't force you, he said. I just want to sit nearby, that's all. He lowered himself to the ground, leaving a safe distance between them. Hours passed as he spoke in calm tones, telling stories of his own world, of cities that were alive with laughter rather than flames, of humans who worked together instead of fighting. The child listened, her body tense, ready to erupt at any sudden movement. Occasionally she would hiss or flare a small jet of fire, but Kale remained still, patient, unafraid. Night fell and the temperature dropped. The glowing embers in the ruins cast long, flickering shadows. Kale noticed the child shivering, her small body tucked against itself for warmth. He reached slowly into his pack and produced a thermal blanket, laying it near her without forcing it on her. She glanced at it suspiciously, then slowly inched closer, finally allowing herself to touch the warm fabric. It was a small act, but for Kale it was a breakthrough. Over the next few days, Kale continued to stay near her, never forcing contact, never rushing her trust. He learned her patterns. She avoided open spaces, feared sudden noises, and would lash out instinctively if someone approached too quickly. He also discovered glimpses of her intelligence. She could mimic his gestures, understand simple instructions, and even respond with small nods or shakes of her head. Each tiny interaction was a victory, each moment of calm a step forward. One morning, as the orange dawn light crept over the ruined skyline, Kale saw her watching him from the remains of a collapsed building. Her eyes were wider than usual, filled with curiosity rather than fear. He smiled softly and waved, careful to keep his movements slow. She tilted her head, a small puff of smoke escaping her nostrils. Kale knew that trust could not be rushed, but he also knew that a being with such power, isolated and alone, could be fragile in ways that were easy to miss. She had lived only with fear and destruction, and every instinct told her that humans were dangerous. But Kale's presence, steady and calm, began to show her that not all humans were the same. On the third day, a sudden rumble startled both of them. A section of the ruined plaza collapsed with a deafening crash, sending a cloud of dust into the air. The child's eyes widened in panic, and a small burst of flame escaped her mouth. Kale instinctively raised his arm, shielding himself while maintaining a calm expression. "It's okay," he said softly. "I'm not going anywhere." She froze, her flames flickering uncertainly. Then slowly she retreated a few steps, watching him carefully. Kale stayed seated, speaking in gentle tones, allowing her to regain her composure. The moment passed, leaving them both tense but unharmed. As the sun climbed higher, Kale noticed a small scar along the child's shoulder, partially hidden by her scales. He realized that this child had not only survived war, but had likely been hurt by it in ways that went beyond the physical. The realization deepened his resolve. He would not let fear or instinct dictate their relationship. He would show her patience, understanding, and, most importantly, that kindness existed even in a world filled with fire and ruin. Days turned into a week, and the child's behavior began to change subtly. She allowed Kale to sit closer, sometimes even sharing her space without incident. When he spoke, she listened more intently, her eyes softening, curiosity shining through the usual wariness. Kale responded with care, never raising his voice, never making sudden movements. He discovered that she enjoyed hearing about human inventions, the small joys of life, and stories of companionship. It was remarkable how quickly a creature so feared could be drawn to something as simple as a voice that did not threaten it. One evening, as the sky bled into deep purples and blues, Kale set down a small bowl of water and some rations near her. She sniffed cautiously, then stepped forward to drink. The simple act felt monumental. It was trust in the smallest form, but trust nonetheless. Kale watched quietly, pride swelling in his chest. He knew the road ahead would be long, but this moment confirmed that connection was possible, even here among the ruins. The first real breakthrough came when Kale, noticing her trembling, reached out slowly and rested a hand a few inches from her arm. She flinched, sparks jumping off her scales, but did not lash out. "It's okay," he whispered. "You don't have to fight me." For the first time, she let her guard down slightly. Her tail twitched uncertainly, and a small, flickering flame danced along her fingertip, not a weapon but a nervous twitch. Kale smiled, understanding. He did not move closer, only watched, letting her take the lead. Slowly, cautiously, she inched forward, resting the tip of her hand against his. It was a connection neither of them fully understood yet, but it was the beginning of trust. That night, Kale sat near her as the stars appeared overhead, their light reflected faintly in her glowing scales. She whispered again the same words as before, but softer. "I burn everyone else." Kale nodded, his voice calm and steady. "I know, but not me. I won't leave and I won't hurt you." For a moment, the dragon child simply stared at him. Then, ever so slightly, she leaned into him, testing the safety of the space around her. It was a small act, almost imperceptible, but for Kale, it was monumental. He reached gently, resting a protective arm around her without restraining her, simply offering warmth and reassurance. In the midst of ruins, fire, and fear, a fragile bond had begun to form. The human and the dragon child, two beings from entirely different worlds, had found a way to connect. Trust had begun to blossom where destruction had reigned. And though the road ahead was uncertain, Kale understood something essential. Even the most dangerous creatures could learn to feel safe if someone had the patience to stay. As the night deepened, the city remained silent, smoke curling lazily into the sky. The dragon child curled against Kale's side, eyes half closed, no longer fully alert for threats. For the first time, perhaps, she allowed herself to rest. Kale's heart swelled with quiet hope. Tomorrow, he thought, would bring more challenges. But tonight, they had found something worth protecting, something more powerful than fear, more enduring than fire. Trust. Kale woke to the soft glow of the morning sun filtering through the broken skyline. The city remained silent except for the occasional rumble of settling rubble. Beside him, the dragon child stirred, her scales shimmering faintly in the warm light. She blinked slowly, her ember-like eyes meeting his, and for a moment the world felt still. "Good morning," Kale whispered. "Sleep well?" The child gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. Her tail twitched nervously, but she stayed close, letting him see her without raising her flames. Kale smiled. Each day, the little gestures of trust built a bridge between them. Yesterday, she had allowed him to rest his hand near hers, and tonight she had curled beside him without flaring in fear. These were small victories, but victories nonetheless. Breakfast was simple. Kale shared some rations with her, placing food and water within reach without forcing her to move. She hesitated, sniffing cautiously before taking small bites. Kale watched quietly, allowing her to feel in control. He understood that patience was key. The child had survived long enough by relying on her fire to defend herself. Giving that power up, even for a moment, required immense courage. Their routine continued quietly until a distant, low hum interrupted the calm. Kale tensed, scanning the horizon. It was faint at first, almost imperceptible, but it grew steadily louder, vibrating through the ash-strewn ground. The dragon child stiffened beside him, her scales flickering with tiny sparks. Kale noticed her body language instantly. This sound meant danger. "They're coming," she whispered. The fear in her voice was raw and palpable. "They'll take me, hurt me." Kale placed a calming hand near hers without touching, letting her know he was there. "We won't let them," he said firmly. "Stay close and follow my lead." From the horizon, a squad of alien ships appeared, sleek and black, their engines cutting through the morning haze. They were hunters sent to capture unique life forms for experimentation. Kale's heart clenched. He knew the child would not survive in their hands. Her abilities were far too dangerous for them to understand or respect. "Move," Kale urged. "We have to get to cover." The child hesitated, panic flickering across her features. Her small wings twitched instinctively and a tiny flame licked the air. Kale didn't flinch. "I'm right here, trust me," he said, holding out his hand. After a moment, she inched closer, allowing him to guide her. They darted between crumbling walls and over scorched rooftops, Kale assessing each step carefully. The hunters had spotted them, and alien drones descended, scanning the ruins for heat signatures. Every step was dangerous. One misstep could trigger her instinct, which might expose them both. Kale knew he had to teach her control. "Focus on me," he instructed softly. "Take a deep breath. You're safe as long as you stay calm." The dragon child hesitated but followed his guidance. She inhaled slowly, her tiny chest rising, and the faint glow of her scales dimmed slightly. Kale allowed a small smile. This was progress. They were learning to communicate in moments of danger without relying on instinct alone. They found a narrow alley between two collapsed buildings, the perfect place to hide. Kale crouched, and the child followed, her body tense but alert. From the shadows, they watched as the hunters swept past, unaware of their presence. Kale exhaled silently, relief flooding through him. "You're getting better," he whispered, nodding at her. She looked at him, a flicker of pride in her glowing eyes. Kale reached out again, letting her rest her small head on his shoulder. She flinched at first, then relaxed slightly, a sign that she was beginning to understand trust was not a trap. Hours passed as they moved cautiously, avoiding patrols and navigating through the ruined city. The dragon child began to follow his lead more willingly, matching his pace, learning to hide and control her fire. Kale spoke to her about everything, about his world, about hope, and about the idea that not everyone wanted to hurt her. Slowly, she began to respond, even offering small gestures of curiosity. At midday, they reached a large, cratered plaza. Kale stopped to assess their options. The dragon child crouched beside him, her tail curling protectively around her legs. "We need to keep moving," he said. "There's a safe zone nearby, a place humans and other species live without fear." She tilted her head, hesitant. "Safe?" "Yes," Kale said gently. "A place where you won't be hunted. I'll get you there." Her glowing eyes softened, and she nodded, trusting him once again. Kale felt a quiet warmth in his chest. Trust was fragile, but it was growing. As they moved through the plaza, a sudden alarm blared from one of the alien drones. Kale cursed under his breath. The hunters had found them. He grabbed the child's hand, urging her to run. She flapped her small wings, keeping pace with him, her fire flaring instinctively but controlled this time. Kale used a piece of debris as a shield, protecting her as they sprinted toward a nearby tunnel that led underground. Once inside, Kale leaned against the wall, letting the child catch her breath. She trembled, a mix of fear and excitement in her glowing eyes. "I almost burned them," she admitted quietly, her voice shaking. Kale shook his head. "You didn't, you controlled it, that's progress." "That's what matters." She looked at him, eyes wide. "I don't know if I can do it again." Kale placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You can, I'll be with you every step, we face this together." Night fell as they rested in the tunnel. Kale used a small device to create light and warmth, careful not to overwhelm her senses. He spoke softly, telling stories of planets filled with life, of creatures that were feared but loved once understood, of humans who had learned to care for even the most dangerous beings. She listened, fascinated despite herself, her tiny flames flickering gently as if in response to his words. When sleep came, it was uneasy. The child curled beside Kale, her body still tense, ready to react at the slightest threat. But for the first time, she did not flee. Kale kept his arm around her, not pressing, not forcing, simply being a presence she could rely on. The following morning, Kale taught her how to move quietly, to control her fire even under stress, and to read the environment for signs of danger. The dragon child was a fast learner, her fear giving way to cautious confidence. Each success, no matter how small, strengthened the bond between them. but danger was never far away. As they emerged from the tunnel, they saw a patrol of alien soldiers in the distance. Kale's heart pounded, but he remained calm. He whispered instructions, guiding her step by step. The child flared once, then quickly controlled the burst, startling the patrol without revealing their position. Kale smiled. She was learning to use her power responsibly. The chase continued for hours. They navigated collapsed bridges, burned-out streets, and fields of jagged rubble. The dragon child's wings, once too small to carry her far, now lifted her in short bursts, helping them escape difficult terrain. Kale marveled at her courage and adaptability. Despite everything, she had survived alone for so long, and now she was learning to survive with someone she trusted. By late afternoon, they reached the outskirts of the ruined city. The alien ships hovered in the distance, frustrated by the child's unexpected cleverness and Kale's guidance. The human pointed toward a forested valley beyond the city's edge. "There," he said. "That's our next stop. From there we can find the safe zone." The dragon child looked at the trees, a mix of fear and hope in her eyes. She whispered, "Trees, they don't burn, right?" Kale chuckled softly. "Not unless you want them to, but we'll leave them alone." She smiled faintly, a small, almost human expression. Kale felt a surge of pride. Every day, every moment, trust grew between them, and with it, her control over the fire that had made her so feared. As they prepared to move, Kale noticed her trembling slightly. He knelt, brushing ash from her scales. "It's okay," he said. "We face this together. You're not alone anymore." The dragon child leaned into him, and for a brief moment, she allowed herself to rest without fear. Kale held her gently, knowing that tomorrow would bring more challenges, but confident that together they could face anything. The hunters were relentless, the world was broken, and danger lay in every shadow. Yet in the midst of fire, ruin, and fear, a fragile bond had formed. The dragon child had learned that trust could exist even in the darkest places, and Kale had discovered that courage came not only from power, but from patience, understanding, and unwavering empathy. As night fell, the valley before them bathed in the silver glow of twin moons. The dragon child perched beside Kale. She whispered softly, I think I can do this with you." Kale nodded, smiling. "Yes, together." And with that, they stepped forward, leaving the ruins behind, beginning a journey that would test their courage, their trust, and the extraordinary bond between human and dragon child. The valley stretched before them, lush and green in sharp contrast to the scorched city they had just escaped. Trees swayed gently in a warm breeze, birds chirped, and a small river wound its way through the landscape. Kale paused at the edge, letting the dragon child take in the sight. Her glowing eyes widened, reflecting wonder, awe, and a hint of disbelief. They don't burn," she whispered. "No," Kale replied softly, kneeling beside her. "Not here, everything is safe. Take a moment." For the first time in days, the child allowed herself to breathe freely, watching the trees sway without fear. Kale smiled, knowing this was more than just a break. It was a lesson. She needed to understand that not everything in the world wanted to harm her. Some things were simply beautiful, existing for life itself, not destruction. They moved carefully through the valley, Kale guiding her along narrow paths, helping her avoid rocks and fallen logs. The dragon child's wings, now stronger and more responsive, lifted her in small hops, letting her cross streams and small gaps with ease. She glanced at Kale and nodded, a faint flicker of pride in her glowing eyes. As they walked, Kale spoke gently, telling her about the safe zone ahead, a place where humans and other species lived in harmony. "You'll meet others there," he said. "Some may be afraid at first, but they can learn to trust you just like I did." The child listened carefully, but her expression darkened. I heard everyone before. I can't be trusted." Kale shook his head. "You don't have to be perfect. Trust isn't about never making mistakes. It's about trying and learning and caring for others. You've done that already with me. That's a start." Her scales flickered faintly, a sign of nervousness or thought. Kale let the moment hang, giving her space to process his words. Finally, she nodded slowly, and they continued onward. As the sun climbed higher, the ground began to tremble. Kale froze, scanning the horizon. In the distance, dark shapes moved quickly through the valley, more hunters. This time they were faster, more organized, clearly determined to capture the dragon child. "Run!" Kale shouted, grabbing her hand. "We have to move now." The child's wings spread instinctively, and she launched herself into the air. Kale followed, using his own agility to leap across rocks and over fallen trees. The hunters were closing fast, firing energy pulses that hissed past them. Kale shielded the child with his body whenever possible, guiding her away from danger while keeping her calm. "Focus," he shouted. "You control the fire, use it only when necessary." The child's flames flickered, small bursts of orange and red dancing along her scales. She hesitated, then concentrated, sending a controlled jet of fire toward a hovering drone. It exploded in a bright flash, clearing their path. Kale smiled in relief. She was learning to use her power responsibly, to protect rather than destroy indiscriminately. They ran deeper into the valley, the hunters hot on their trail. Kale led them through dense forests, over streams, and across rocky outcroppings. The dragon child flapped and jumped, her body now responding to his guidance and instructions. Every step was a test of coordination and trust, and they passed it together. At dusk, they reached a narrow canyon. The walls rose high, the only way forward a thin path along the edge of a sheer drop. Kale carefully guided her along the path, hand lightly resting on her back for reassurance. "Keep your balance," he said. "One misstep and—" The dragon child flinched, her eyes wide with fear, but she followed his instructions. Her wings helped her maintain stability, and she moved slowly, deliberately, learning to control her body as Kale had taught her. Suddenly, a patrol appeared at the other end of the path. Kale froze, the hunters were closing in from both directions. He glanced at the child, who was trembling, her flames flickering uncontrollably. "It's okay," Kale whispered. "We can do this together. You have the power, use it to protect, not to hurt unnecessarily." She inhaled deeply, focusing on him. The flames along her scales pulsed brighter, then steadied, as if responding to her will. With a burst of controlled fire, she created a wall of heat between them and the approaching hunters, forcing them to pause. Kale used the moment to grab her hand and move forward, leaping across the remaining gap in the canyon. The hunters regrouped, but by the time they pursued, Kale and the child had vanished into the dense forest. They paused, panting, the adrenaline slowly leaving their bodies. The dragon child's flames dimmed as she sank to the ground, exhausted but exhilarated. You did it," Kale said softly, brushing ash from her scales. "You controlled it. You're stronger than you think." She looked at him, eyes shimmering with a mixture of pride and disbelief. I didn't hurt anyone," she whispered. "Not really." Kale nodded, smiling. "Exactly, you protected us. That's the important part." They rested for the night in a small clearing, the forest providing natural cover. Kale made a small fire for warmth, careful to keep it away from her. The dragon child curled beside him, her body tense at first, but gradually relaxing. He could feel her heart rate slowing, her trust growing. As the stars appeared overhead, Kale spoke gently. "Tomorrow we continue to the safe zone. There you'll meet others like you, beings who have been misunderstood or feared just like you." The dragon child tilted her head, curious. "Others like me?" "Yes," Kale replied. "You're not alone in this world. There are people and creatures who will accept you for who you are, not just what you can do." She was silent for a long moment, thinking. Finally, she whispered, I want to see them, but what if I fail?" Kale placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "You won't fail. You have me and you have yourself. Trust in that. That's all you need." The night passed quietly, the child finally allowing herself to sleep without flaring in fear. Kale watched over her, his mind filled with thoughts of what lay ahead. The journey would not be easy, and the hunters would not give up. But he also knew that they had made real progress. The child had begun to understand control, trust, and the power of connection. The next morning, they continued through the forest. The dragon child's movements were more confident now, her wings lifting her in small jumps and glides, her flames flickering calmly along her scales without igniting the surroundings. Kale noticed the change and felt a quiet pride. She was learning, adapting, and growing stronger not just physically, but emotionally. As they approached a river, Kale stopped and gestured for her to drink. She hesitated, then dipped her snout into the water, taking a careful sip. Kale mirrored her, letting her see that there was nothing to fear. The simple act of drinking from the river became a lesson in trust and calm, a step toward independence. Suddenly, the hunters' presence became apparent again. From the opposite bank of the river, their dark shapes emerged, cutting off the valley exit. Kale realized they would have to fight or outsmart them to survive. He whispered instructions quickly to the dragon child, guiding her to a narrow crossing where she could use her flames defensively without causing unnecessary harm. The child hesitated, but Kale held her gaze. "You can do this," he said. "Remember control. Protect, don't destroy." She inhaled, flames flickering, then exhaled a controlled burst that created a barrier of heat and light. The hunters hesitated, unsure how to approach without being burned. Kale took advantage of the pause, guiding the child across the river safely. Once on the other side, they moved quickly through the forest, putting distance between themselves and the hunters. By late afternoon, they reached a hill overlooking a distant city, the safe zone Kale had promised. The dragon child's eyes widened, taking in the sight. Tall buildings gleamed in the sunlight, and in the streets below, humans and other species moved together peacefully. Kale knelt beside her. "There it is, our destination, a place where you can finally be safe." The child hesitated, then whispered, I can do this." Kale smiled. "Yes, you've come this far, you've learned to control your power, trust, and survive. This is your chance to start anew." She looked at him, eyes filled with hope and determination. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe in the possibility of a life without fear, without being hunted, and without being alone. Together, they began their descent toward the city, ready to face whatever challenges awaited them, confident that trust, courage, and friendship could overcome even the darkest fears. The city shimmered in the late afternoon sun, a vibrant contrast to the ruins they had left. Behind, towering buildings reflected light in silver and gold, while the streets below were alive with movement, humans and other species interacting peacefully, trading goods, laughing, and sharing stories. For the first time, the dragon child felt something entirely new: hope. Kale held her hand gently as they approached the city gates. "This is it," he said softly. "Safe, you don't have to fight anyone here." The child's scales flickered, a nervous but curious glow. They won't hurt me." "No," Kale replied. "You're among friends now. People who can learn to understand you just like I have." She paused at the entrance, wings slightly raised, ready to flee if necessary. Kale knelt beside her, meeting her glowing eyes. "I'll stay with you. Nothing will happen unless you want it to." Slowly, she allowed him to lead her forward. As they entered the city, eyes turned to them, curious, cautious, but not hostile. Kale's presence seemed to calm her, and she began to move with more confidence. Small children stared in awe at her scales, but they did not run or scream. Adults watched quietly, some whispering to each other, assessing whether she posed a danger. A kind-looking human approached, hands raised slightly in greeting. "Hello," he said. "You must be the new visitor. Don't worry, you're safe here." The dragon child tensed, flames flickering slightly along her scales. Kale squeezed her hand. "They're not here to hurt you. Try to trust me." She took a deep breath and nodded, allowing herself to step forward. The human smiled and gestured toward the city center. "Come, I'll show you where you can rest and eat. You're welcome here." Kale guided her through winding streets, explaining quietly that people here had learned to accept different species, even those with unusual abilities. The child listened, her gaze darting from one person to another. No one attacked or screamed. No one flinched at her flames. It was a new experience, freedom without fear. They reached a small, peaceful park in the heart of the city. Children played with creatures of all shapes and sizes, some with wings, some with horns, and some with glowing scales like hers. The dragon child's eyes widened. She had never seen so many beings like her, not in power but in uniqueness. There was acceptance here, not fear. Kale knelt beside her. "Look around. You're not alone anymore. People here understand that different doesn't mean dangerous." She blinked, taking in the scene. A small creature with shimmering wings flew near, smiling at her curiously. She tilted her head, unsure how to respond, and Kale whispered, "It's okay. They're friendly. You can choose to interact or you can watch, whatever you feel safe doing." Slowly, she stepped forward, her tiny claws brushing the grass. She exhaled a small puff of controlled fire, careful not to harm anything. The nearby creature chirped and hovered closer, unafraid. The dragon child's scales flickered with delight, and a small, genuine smile spread across her face. Kale watched quietly, pride swelling in his chest. The day passed with introductions and gentle guidance. The dragon child met others with unique abilities, some feared in the past but now accepted. Each interaction was a lesson in trust, control, and connection. She discovered that her fire, once a weapon of instinct and fear, could be a tool for protection and warmth, even for play. By evening, Kale led her to a small residence provided by the city's guardians. It was simple but comfortable, with a soft bed, a quiet space, and an open window overlooking the park. The dragon child hesitated at the doorway, then turned to Kale. "Stay?" she asked softly. Kale smiled. "Of course, I'll stay as long as you need me." Inside, she explored cautiously, testing her wings and flames in small bursts, each controlled and deliberate. Kale observed, offering encouragement and gentle corrections when necessary. The dragon child was learning not only about trust in others, but trust in herself, her abilities, her judgment, and her place in the world. That night, she curled on the bed, her scales dimly glowing. Kale sat beside her, keeping a quiet vigil. The stars outside were bright, reflected in her eyes, and she whispered softly, I thought I would always burn everyone." Kale reached out, resting a hand gently on her shoulder. "Not everyone, not me. You've already shown you can protect, care, and choose." "That's more than most beings ever learn." She tilted her head, considering his words. I like it here," she admitted. "No one is afraid, everyone is calm." Kale nodded. "Yes, and this is only the beginning. You'll meet more people, learn more, and discover that trust and friendship are stronger than fear." The next few days were filled with lessons, exploration, and small victories. The dragon child learned to interact with others safely, discovering that her flames could be used for warmth, signaling, or creating light without causing harm. Kale guided her gently, allowing her to take the lead in small tasks while remaining close enough to intervene if needed. She met a small group of children who had been misunderstood in the past, some with abilities she had never seen before. They played together cautiously at first, and then with growing trust and laughter. The dragon child's scales flickered brightly, her wings fluttering in excitement. Kale watched, heart swelling, knowing that she was beginning to understand what it meant to be part of a community. One afternoon, as the city's twin moons rose in the sky, Kale took her to the top of a hill overlooking the park. She perched beside him, wings folded neatly. The city glowed softly beneath them, peaceful and alive. I think I understand now," she said quietly. "I can be part of something without hurting anyone." Kale nodded. "Exactly. You've learned control, patience, and trust. You're strong not just because of your fire, but because of your heart. That's what matters most." She looked at him, eyes shining with emotion. "I thought I would always be alone, always feared, always dangerous." "You're not alone anymore," Kale said softly. "You have me. You have friends, you have people who care, and most importantly, you have yourself." The dragon child let out a small sigh, leaning against him. For the first time in her life, she felt safe, truly safe. The fear that had driven her for so long, the fear that she would burn everyone else, was still there faintly, but it no longer controlled her. She could choose, and now she chose trust, friendship, and hope. In the days that followed, she explored the city more freely, learning to control her fire in public spaces, helping others, and discovering joy in simple interactions. Kale remained close, guiding her but allowing her independence. The city's inhabitants gradually accepted her presence, seeing that her abilities were no longer a threat. One morning, as the sun rose over the city, the dragon child turned to Kale. "Thank you," she said softly, "for staying, for trusting me, for believing I could be more than fire and fear." Kale smiled, ruffling her scales gently. "No thanks needed. You've done all the hard work yourself. I just helped you see what was already inside you." She nodded, her glowing eyes reflecting both the sunlight and a new understanding. For the first time, she saw herself not as a weapon, not as a danger, but as someone capable of love, care, and belonging. As the days turned into weeks, the dragon child became a part of the city's community. She played with children, assisted in small tasks, and even helped protect the city from minor threats, using her fire responsibly. Kale observed from a distance, proud of how far she had come. The bond they had forged through trust, patience, and courage had transformed both their lives. At night, she would sometimes curl beside Kale under the stars, whispering softly, "I thought I would always burn everyone, but not you." Kale smiled, hugging her gently. "Never you. Not me, and never anyone who learns to care." The dragon child closed her eyes, finally at peace. The fire that had once been her curse had become her strength, and the fear that had isolated her was replaced by trust and hope. She was no longer alone. She was part of something greater, friendship, community, and a world that had finally accepted her. Together, human and dragon child watched the twin moons rise over the peaceful city, a symbol of a new beginning. The journey had been long, filled with danger and fear, but it had led them here, to safety, understanding, and the realization that even the most feared creatures could find love and acceptance. And for the first time in her life, the dragon child smiled, not out of fear or caution, but because she knew she belonged. The world was vast, full of challenges, and yet full of hope. And with Kale by her side, she knew she could face whatever came next.